Being a veterinarian means I get to be happy. It means I get to enjoy what I do every day. I get to get up and come to work knowing that I am going to help animals and help their owners, and hopefully bring healing and health. And it means educating and teaching people about the best way to help their animals. I decided to become a veterinarian when I was 13 years old. My pony had a lot of trouble walking, and I had a veterinary friend that performed surgery on his front legs to remove part of the nerves to make him walk better. I thought it was the greatest thing I had ever seen, and I decided right then and there that that was what I was going to do. The first animal I ever performed chiropractic on was carried into the office and couldn't walk, and after we did the chiropractic treatment, the dog ran out of the office. To me, it seemed like a miracle. Clayton and Churchtown Veterinary Associates are very different from other veterinary hospitals because we look at things from a different perspective. Whereas your traditional veterinarian may be trying to sell prescription diets or have you feed foods that come from big box stores, we work very closely to tailor each diet to each specific animal, whether that be home cooked, raw, high quality canned or dry food, but we want to make sure that each diet fits each individual animal. We also treat with less medications and more holistic treatments such as chiropractic, acupuncture, laser therapy, food therapy, herbal therapy. Many clients come to us looking to decrease the amount of medications that their animals are taking that could have potentially harmful side effects. One of my greatest passions in life is helping rescue pets. I work very closely with 3 different Cavalier King Charles Spaniel rescue groups, but in our practice we work with many different rescue groups, including Bulldog Rescue, Vizsla Rescue, Ridgeback Rescue, Dachshund Rescue. Pretty much any breed organization that comes and asks us, we will help work with them. We do low-cost spay-neuter for shelter animals and rescue pets, and I am passionate about finding homes for all the throwaway animals in the world. I am also extremely passionate about puppy mills and the fact that they should disappear. I don't believe in puppy mills and the wholesale breeding of animals to make more puppies to be sold in pet stores.
Thanks for taking the time to join us. Now it's time to sit back and enjoy the show.
Except we're...
Yep, you're good to go.
Yeah, except we're way in the middle.
No, that's where you're supposed to be.
No, that's in the middle.
Oh, it's starting in the middle. All right, right. Oh, shoot, sorry. Right. Why did it start in the middle? Go to... There we go. And you're on.
Good afternoon. Welcome to our food webinars, part 2 in the series. I'm Dr. Judy Morgan, and for those of you who are returning for the second week, I'm so glad to have you on board. And for those of you who are new, I hope you've had a chance to go back and review the webinar from last week. If not, it is posted on our website, www.claytonvetnj.com. It's also posted on our Facebook page at Clayton Veterinary Associates. So let's get started. So the title of our webinar series is Food is the Foundation of Life, and this is part 2, and we're going to talk about pet food formulations today. So last week we said it's true, you are what you eat, and this week it's still true, you are what you eat. So just a quick review, what is real food? Real food consists of fresh fruits and vegetables, all those bright colors, preferably fruits and vegetables that are sourced locally, that are grown without pesticides and chemical fertilizers, and organic if at all possible. Fresh meats, again, organic,
preferably grass-fed, free-range, not feedlot grown, and not fed GMO corn and grain. And in the case of poultry, not fed grain that is laced with antibiotics and growth hormones. Whole grains from the fields that are, again, pesticide-free and organic and free of chemical fertilizers. If you can find all of those things to feed your pets and feed yourself, you're all going to be much healthier. The biggest problem is it can be expensive to eat that way and can be difficult to find those sources, particularly if you live in a city or somewhere where you don't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables and meats and grains. So we want to talk about pet food formulations today. And so this is a photo of some food that was found around our house, and we do have a little bit of dry food in our house. That one in the picture happens to be Evanger's for cats, and we don't feed much dry food at all in our house. In fact, most dry food bags, even if I bought the smallest one, would probably go stale long before they would ever get fed, and we'll talk about why as we move through the series today. Semi-moist foods, I don't have any in the picture. I will never have them in my house other than as a bad example of what not to feed, and we'll talk about that a little later. Refrigerated rolls, I have not fed those to my pets. They're fairly new to the market. Not a bad way to go, and again, we'll talk about those. Canned food, there are a lot of really high quality canned foods on the market. There are also a lot of really low quality canned foods on the market, and they definitely have their place in pet food feeding today, so we'll talk about those. Home cooked. Next week we will talk more about making your own home cooked formulations and your own raw formulations for people who want to feed raw and aren't quite sure how to do that. So we'll talk about those a little bit more next week. In the picture there's Stella and Chewy's, which is a frozen raw product. They also make a freeze-dried or dehydrated raw, which I don't have in the picture. The patties that are on the plate up front, those are Stella and Chewy's patties. And then we'll talk a little bit about treats and snacks and things that you can use. And there are a lot of different things you can use for treats and snacks. So let's get to the meat of the matter. So we're going to start with dry food. This will be the longest segment in the webinar because dry food is the most common formulation fed to pets in this country today. And where did dry food originate? Dry food originated back in the 50s when we had all the waste products left over from the human food industry, and we wanted to figure out what to do with those and make some money off of those. And we wanted to be have more convenience for people to feed their pets. So one of the pros with dry food is it is convenient. You can just open that bag, dump some kibble into a bowl, walk away, and you're done. So it's really, really very simple. Price can be inexpensive. It can also be very expensive. So depending on the quality of the dry food that you're feeding, that could be a pro or it could be a con. Pet preference. A lot of animals prefer dry food. A lot of cats prefer dry food. And we touched on it a little bit last week, but I'm going to hammer that home today. I do not think that cats should ever eat dry food, and they happen to love dry food. Dry food also has a long shelf life. When you buy a bag of food at the pet store or at the supermarket and you look at the expiration date, that expiration date may be over a year out. So pet food, dry pet food has a lot of preservatives in it, whether they be chemical or natural preservatives, but the food in that bag will last a very long time. I think that's also a con, and we'll talk about that next. So cons. Cons with dry pet food. High heat processing. Dry food is a dehydrated product. Again, that goes with the name, dry food. So it has only 3 to maybe 6% moisture in it. So in order to dehydrate that food and get down to that really low moisture content, we have to use high heat. And the foods are extruded or made into a kibble using that high heat processing. The dry cat food is very high protein, and you'll find that it can be very, very hard to even crack that dry food if you hit it with a hammer, whereas dog food will shatter a little bit easier. Dry foods are carbohydrate laden. in order to make a dry food and process it at the plant, it has to have at least 50% carbohydrates. There are a couple of foods just hitting the market where they're saying they've taken the carbohydrates out, but those foods are running anywhere from $12 to $20 a pound. There's only one on the market that I can even think of, and I can't remember the name of it because nobody's feeding it. It's just too expensive. So if you buy a grain-free thinking that you are getting away from carbohydrates, you're not. The dry food, in order to make it stick into a kibble, has to have something to hold it together. So what's used to hold it together? Things like pea starch, white potatoes, tapioca starch, and all of those are carbohydrates. Yes, they may be a better carbohydrate than white rice or corn. However, they still are carbohydrates. So you're still going to have at least 50% carbohydrates in that food. What's the problem with carbohydrates? Well, even in the human food industry, we find over the years, too many carbs will lead to obesity. Carbs break down to sugars. Our body has to process all those sugars. What do those sugars lead to? Those sugars lead to diabetes. Diabetes is just as common in pets as it is in people. We're talking type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes, which is the one that is juvenile diabetes, very uncommon in pets, definitely more common in people. But we are seeing more and more of it in older pets because of the carbohydrate-laden food. Skin disease. A lot of the carbohydrates, wheat, corn, soy, used in some of the lower quality products will definitely lead to allergies and more skin problems. Ear infections. Over 90% of the ear infections in dogs that are caused by yeast are due to allergies to their food, most commonly to the carbohydrates in the food. Sure, you can have allergies to proteins. I have some pets that are allergic to beef or allergic to fish or chicken, but much more commonly it's the carbohydrates in the food that cause those yeasty ear infections. If I could get people who keep coming in with chronic ear infection problems in their pets to just switch out the diet, they would soon learn that they might spend more money on the food, but they will spend a lot less money in my office. Not only will they spend less money, their pets will be a lot more comfortable. Those yeasty ear infections are itchy, painful, and you think that your pet doesn't listen, your pet might not be able to hear you because with a swollen ear canal, he's not getting sound waves generated down in there. All he hears is the fluid that's in his ear. Dental disease. Most people think that feeding dry food is going to prevent dental disease. In actuality, it's just the opposite. All the carbohydrates that break down to sugars cause more dental disease in pets and more tartar buildup. If you've ever seen a cat or a dog vomit right after eating, most of that food comes up unchewed. They swallow it whole. The only way you're going to prevent dental disease with a dry pet food is to have a dry pet food that is made in chunks that are so big your pet cannot possibly swallow them whole, and they must be chewed to break down. So there is a prescription product called TD, which stands for Tartar Diet, and one of the reasons it works is because it's a very large piece of kibble and it has a kind of an airy matrix and it's pretty hard. And so the dogs have to chew, and cats have to chew pretty hard to break that food down, so it helps break off dental tartar. Do I like that food? Heck no. You all know I'm not a big fan of prescription diets. It's not made with good ingredients. And there are a lot better ways to prevent dental disease in our pets than feeding dry foods. So, storage mites. Storage mites are going to be found in any bag of dry dog food that is kept over a month or two at your house. I don't care how you store it. I don't care what kind of sealed container you put it in. If we test that food after it has been sitting at your house for a couple of months, we will find storage mites. Those storage mites are a contributor to skin allergies and the itchiness that we see in pets. So if you insist on feeding a dry food to your pet, please buy it in small bags, something that would be used up in 1 month or less. Please do not buy a 50-pound bag of kibble for a Chihuahua. It will last you all year and it will be rancid, stale, and filled with storage mites long before you ever get through the bag. Okay, dehydration. So we are now feeding a food that is about 92 to 95% dry matter, which means there's very, very little moisture in that food. And it's made that way for a reason. We want to be able to store it for a long time. We want ease of feeding. So, in order to take that food and rehydrate it to the point where it's going to be the same as eating a home-cooked meal or a canned meal, we're going to have to take that food that has 6% moisture and get it back up to about 80% moisture. So even if we want to get it to 60% moisture, that's 10 times the moisture that is in that food. So if you're going to say to me, well, I add water to the dry food, therefore it's rehydrated. In order to get up to that percentage, take that 1 cup of dry food, add 10 cups of water, maybe you'll come close to where you need to be. There are very few pets who can drink 10 cups of water along with a cup of food. And you don't really want them to. We don't want to get into bloating issues and all the other things that would occur if a pet drank that much water. So how does the food get rehydrated once it goes into the pet's body? Well, the pet sucks the moisture out of their own body, out of their cells, out of their bloodstream, and pours moisture into the digestive tract. And that's what causes the food to break down along with the acids in the stomach and pass through the digestive system. So what we're doing is we're taking our pets over the course of many years that are fed dry food and we're dehydrating them. When you look at a urinalysis on a cat or a dog that's fed dry food, their urine is very, very, very concentrated. It has what we call a high specific gravity. And that's because they're constantly dehydrated. Their kidneys are always trying to preserve water and keep moisture in the body. What happens when we have a very concentrated urine? We'll start getting precipitates in the urine. What are those? Those are bladder stones. Those are crystals. So people get really crazy because they have a urinalysis run on their pet and they, oh my goodness, he's got crystals in his urine. Let me give him some medication to fix that. Let me put him on a prescription diet to fix that. Well, here's the problem. We put him on a prescription dry diet. We haven't solved the problem at all. All we've done is added some chemicals to the food to maybe make them drink a little more, but they're still not ever going to catch up. And so feeding dry food to an animal with kidney disease or with bladder stones totally defeats the purpose. And I have a hard time understanding why we even have prescription diets that are dry formulations to treat those diseases. If you insist on using a prescription diet to treat kidney disease or to treat a bladder problem, then please use at least the canned formulation, because then you'll at least be giving the moisture. So dogs that I see that are older, that have been on dry food their entire life, what do I see? I see dry skin. I see very deficient dogs, and we'll get into it later, but they're liver blood deficient. They don't have enough good high quality blood circulating in their system to nourish the skin and the foot pads and the noses and the eyes. So I'll see animals that have dry, flaky skin. I'll see dry noses that are cracked and gray and losing their color. Dry, gray, cracked foot pads. When I see a healthy pet, I am looking for a black patent leather nose and black patent leather foot pads. So everybody who's watching, I know you can't wait to go get your pet and flip him upside down and look at those foot pads and look at his nose. And if you don't see black patent leather, or in some cases pink patent leather, then you've got an animal who's too dry and we need to feed that deficiency. For those of you with breeds that are prone to dry eye, you will never, ever cure a case of dry eye by keeping your pet on dry food. The only way to get dry eye to go away is to increase the moisture and increase the blood tonics in that diet. So we have a little guy at our house, George, who is an English toy spaniel, and he came to us after being in foster care for 9 months. No one wanted to adopt George because he had dry eyes, and his eyes were full of mucus and stuck shut, and no one wanted the problem of dealing with that. Most dry eye cases are treated with cyclosporin and teardrops to wet the eyes, and so you're putting drops into your pet's eyes 4 to 8 times a day. Nobody wants to be bothered with that. Nobody has the time for that. Not to mention how painful it is for the pet. If you've ever stood outside on a really windy day with the sand blowing in your face and your eyes hurt and you're squinting and you're rubbing your eyes, that's what these poor little guys feel like all the time. The only way you will solve that problem is to get more moisture into them and get rid of the dry food. So, is there any dry food fed at my house? No. And dry food should never be fed to cats because cats are obligate carnivores. We've just said we can't make an all-meat dry food because it doesn't stick together in a kibble. So we've got all those carbohydrates. What do cats do with carbohydrates? Well, since they're carnivores, they don't know what to do with carbohydrates. So they become obese, they become diabetic, they go into kidney failure, and they make crystals and stones in their urine. All the things we just talked about. If you have a cat who is fed dry food, you cannot starve him into switching over to wet food. A cat will go into liver failure and starve himself to death within 3 days. So if you have a cat who doesn't eat for a week, you're probably going to have a dead cat. Do not starve your cat into eating canned food. Keep offering things from the table, keep offering canned foods, try different consistencies, different flavors until you find something that your cat likes. There are probably 5% of the cats out there who are just real stinkers and absolutely will not switch off dry food. So then we look for what is going to be the best, most moisturizing food that we can get into those guys while sticking with the dry food. And they can be really, really difficult. You also want to regulate the amount of dry food that is fed. Don't ever just fill the bowl and walk away and say, yeah, they'll eat it and nibble on it for the next 3-4 days. First of all, if I did that at my house, my dogs would eat it in 3 minutes, and so the bag would be gone. But cats don't do that. Cats graze. Cats go back and forth to the bowl. The only exercise they get is going back and forth to the bowl. So what happens when they eat carbohydrates, they get a sugar spike. It's sort of like for us eating a candy bar. So we eat the candy bar and our blood sugar goes way up. So then our pancreas says, oh boy, I better dump some insulin on that. Let's get that blood sugar back down. So it squirts out a whole bunch of insulin. That drops the blood sugar back down. Okay, it's 2 hours later. The cat goes, my blood sugar's kind of low. I think I'm hungry. I think I'll go have another candy bar. And that's the process that's repeated all day long, every few hours with your cat. So feeding dry food to a cat, I call it kitty crack because it's basically like living on candy bars. And certainly we would not have our children live on candy bars all day. I don't know why we do it to our pets. So please don't just fill the bowl and walk away. Don't leave your pets alone for the weekend thinking, just leave some dry food. They'll be okay. They'll munch on it, except for the sugar coma that they're developing. Okay. Semi-moist food. Touched on this a little bit last week. There are very few semi-moist foods on the market, and actually the only one that I could find right now is moist and meaty. So the pros, and when I was growing up, there was Gainsburgers. It looked like a little hamburger wrapped in cellophane. We thought it was the greatest thing in the world because, hey, look at this, we're feeding our dog a hamburger. If I'd only known. So pros, it's convenient. You just open the little cellophane wrapper and dump it in the bowl, and it looks really good. So the consumers think look at that, it looks like little pieces of steak we're putting in this bowl. It's so great. Doesn't have a whole lot of packaging, so that's good for the environment. That's the only good thing I can say about that. Cons. Horrendous ingredients. As a matter of fact, the ingredients in this product are so bad that they won't even list them on the website. They're not anywhere to be found. So if you want to know what is in moist and meaty, you're going to have to go to the grocery store and start reading packages. And once you read it, you'll be chasing down the people in the aisle like Hugh and I do when we see people putting it in their cart and telling them, oh, please don't feed that to your dog. You're poisoning him. So the ingredients include byproducts, and they're usually meat byproducts, so they're unspecified. So that's that rendered 4D euthanasia solution meat that we talked about last week. Sugar. Why is that in a pet food? Oh, because it tastes good and they like to eat it. Corn syrup, again, boy, they really like it. It tastes great. Wheat, soy, and dyes. So basically it's a molded sort of plastic feeling piece of red goo that looks like you're feeding your dog chunks of steak, except there's no steak to be found anywhere in there. So what's my problem with this food? Well, it causes diabetes. Look at all the sugar. Our dogs and cats don't know how to handle that. Oh, and by the way, kibbles and bits or moist, kibbles and bits and moist, whatever it is. There are some pieces of this in that as well. So don't feed that one either. Dental decay. Cats actually do develop what we call neck lesions, which are basically cavities. It's where the base of the tooth is destroyed by the sugar wearing away at the enamel, and then they end up having to have their teeth pulled. Skin disease. Boy, if you want to see some really, really rotten coats and allergic skin, look at dogs who eat this product. It is really, really bad. Death. Yep, we can kill them with this stuff. I mean, this one, yeah, it passed that AFCO trial, but if you fed this and only this to your pet for its entire life, I wouldn't expect your pet to live a long time. I have a wonderful new client who came in a few weeks ago who had lost one of their dogs to old age, possibly cancer, I can't remember, but they felt bad for their other old dog about 6 months ago and said, well, you know, we saw this moist and meaty product and it looked really good. So we decided, you know, in his old age, we would treat this dog and let him have, you know, just the best because, you know, we really love him and we feel bad for him. And unfortunately, in wanting to do the right thing, they had done absolutely the wrong thing. They were feeding probably the worst food on the market. I would put Old Roy above this one by a mile. So, and we all know that I'm not a big fan of that. So, and unfortunately, the old dog that they presented to me last week came in because he's got bone cancer. So, you know, is this food a cause of that? Who the heck knows? But it's certainly not going to help this dog recover from his cancer. So the people were wonderful when they went home to start cooking for the dogs right away. And so I was very happy about that. Okay, refrigerated rolls. These are fairly new to the market. Pros, convenient. They're easy to find in the grocery store. They're actually in the refrigerated section of the grocery store, so you don't necessarily have to go to the pet store or to the veterinary office to find these. So that's nice. They're convenient and easy to get. They're cooked at lower temperatures than the dry food, so definitely less processing going into that. They do have a high moisture content, so that's great. And when you slice it, it's sort of like slicing a meatloaf or bologna. So, you know, it's pretty moist. Consumer feels they are providing a higher quality diet. Definitely, because when you read the ingredients or you look at the label, you know, there's pretty good advertising from these guys. But you read the label and you can actually find real meats and you can find some real vegetables in there. So you're definitely providing a higher quality diet, and that's a good thing. And the pets usually do like them. Most people that are feeding these, my clients tell me, oh, my dog really likes this stuff. It's pretty good. So what are the cons? Well, it's definitely more expensive than feeding dry food. It's not going to work the teeth and gums, but remember the dry food didn't really work the teeth and gums either. So we still have to address that issue. Some of these do include soy flour or rice bran as binders, so make sure you read the ingredients really well and know what you're getting. And again, it's still a processed product, so there's still some heat processing in there. It's not the same as going to the farm market and getting your fresh fruits and vegetables. And I'm not sure about the shelf life on this. I would assume that it's got some pretty good preservatives in it and it'll last for quite a while, certainly not as long as the dry food would. But I would suspect that you can keep this in your fridge for a little while. So canned foods. Pros for canned foods. Very convenient. They have a really long shelf life. You can, you know, buy a case of canned food and stick it in your cabinet and forget about it and bury it in the back and find it 2 years later and it's probably still going to have a good expiration date on it. My favorite thing about canned food is it has a high moisture content. You're probably looking at 75 to 80% moisture. Canned foods are usually cooked at lower temperatures, so it's not going to be as highly heat processed, and the nutrition in it is going to be better and not killed off as much by the heating and processing. Most pets absolutely love canned food. If I can get a client just to switch from dry to canned or from dry to half dry and half canned, the pets usually think that this is the best thing that ever happened to them. I've got some brands in the photo there which are pretty high quality stuff. Tiki Dog is actually made at a human food plant in Thailand. I'm not usually a huge fan of bringing things in from Asia and China, but this product happens to be really good. They tend to be mostly chicken based with some seafood, so they have like a chicken and shrimp and I don't know what all their flavors are, but my guys like it. Avengers tends to be a fairly high quality product. That one's a duck and sweet potato. They have some really good products in that they have some unusual ingredients and simple ingredients. So it doesn't have 15 different ingredients. So if you have allergic dogs, sometimes something like that can work very well. The same with the Evo. Sorry, that picture's a little blurry. Merrick, that can right there, Smothered Comfort, absolutely love it. When you open that can and dump it out, whole chicken thighs dump into the bowl. Some people get really wigged out by that and they say, oh my goodness, it's got bones in it. Well, take a spoon and smash those bones. They smash right up. They're soft because of the way that they're processed. Normally, we would not feed any cooked bone because it splinters and gets brittle. the way that Merrick processes the bone, it comes out nice and soft, and it's a great calcium source, and it's got the marrow in there, which is one of the most nutritious things that our pets can eat. So Smothered Comfort happens to have the thighs. Wingaling has whole chicken wings that come out. I ran out of my canned cat food last week, and I happened to have a can of Wingaling for my dog, and I said, well, in a pinch this will work, and I dumped the Wingaling out, and my cat thought she had died and gone to heaven. This was great. She sat there and she snarfed on chicken wings and ate the little bones, and she had a really good time with it. I don't recommend feeding dog food for cats all the time, but if you're in a pinch, they're pretty interchangeable. What it doesn't have that the cats need with cat food, it usually has added taurine, so that's the big reason for not allowing your cat to always eat dog food. So the cons with canned food. It can be expensive. It's definitely going to be more expensive than feeding dry food. Doesn't work the teeth and gums, but hey, neither is anything else that we've talked about so far. Can contain binders depending on what product you're buying. It can have soy or wheat. It can have corn gluten, wheat gluten, and then not quite as bad, but still binders would be things like carrageenan and guar gum. And I don't like binders. I'm much happier with a pet food company that says, hey, you know what, it's okay if it's got some liquid in there that's not all sticky. Just let it be liquid. It's fine. Canned food, again, it is a processed product, but again, it's processed at a lower heat. Packaging may not be environmentally friendly, but certainly if you rinse out your cans and recycle them, then it's not so bad. So make sure that you do that if you're feeding a lot of canned food. So the pictures that we have up here, the kennel ration, I don't think they make kennel ration anymore, but that's what my dogs grew up on when I was little, and it's a Quaker Oats company, and my dad worked for some of these companies way back when I was a kid, and so I remember kennel ration and the picture of that little dog on that can from when I was growing up. The pedigree, if you remember last week when we talked about definitions, at the top it says with lamb and vegetables. Look at that beautiful picture at the top. Oh wow, fresh meat, fresh vegetables, looks phenomenal. Remember what the definition with means? It means 3%. So it has 3% lamb, 3% vegetables. Well, what's the other 94%? That's what I want to know. So flip over the can and read it and you'll find out. Same with Skippy. It says with beef and chicken. 3% beef, 3% chicken. What makes up the other 94% of that? Chunks and gravy. Probably some wheat, some corn, some soy, some glue, putting it all together in nice little chunks with some gravy. So make sure you read the labels. Just because I say I really want your dog to have some more moisture, your cat to have more moisture in their diet, I prefer it be on canned food. Please make sure you're feeding a high quality canned food. Don't go to the bottom of the barrel, because you're going to have as many or more problems feeding these sort of products that have all the glues and sticky stuff and highly allergenic ingredients in them. Okay, home cooked food pros. Well, home cooked food really hit the front line about 8 years ago, 2005, when the big melamine scare and all the pets were dying and there were so many recalls of all the pet foods. So a lot of people went to home cooking and started making their own diets for their dogs. So there's a lot of good about this. It can be inexpensive depending on where you get your ingredients, if you home grow some of your vegetables, if you shop at the big box stores, Costco, Walmart, you can get big bags of chicken breasts fairly inexpensively. So you can home cook inexpensively. It's definitely going to have a high moisture content and usually not cooked at high temperatures, because the crock pot is slow cooking at low temperatures. If you're doing a quick boil or parboiling the food or doing a quick saute, that's definitely at a lower temperature than a dry food or a canned food is going to be processed. If you are grilling the food, that's very high heat. If you're broiling the food, that's very high heat, and you're going to decrease the nutritive value of the food the higher the heat that you use. I like home cooked diets because it's not processed, there's no preservatives or chemicals added, and you can individualize the diet for each pet. So if you have a diabetic pet and we say, oh, we want a really low carb diet, we can do that if we're home cooking. We can figure out how to make a diet that's going to feed that pet and not make the diabetes worse, and possibly even get their dog off of insulin. Certainly works for cats. We get a lot of cats who are transient diabetics, and we can make them not be diabetics by putting them on a high protein, low carb or no carb diet. The same with dogs with stones or allergies or skin problems. Cancer cases, we treat a lot of them with home cooked diets, arthritis cases. So I'm a big fan of home cooked food. But what are the cons? Well, it can be expensive. To do it right, if you're going to use grass-fed, hormone-free, antibiotic-free, organic meats, fruits, vegetables, and grains, then yes, you will spend a lot of money home cooking. Personally, I think that's what we should do with the food that we eat, but I cannot afford to feed my family and my pets only organic, grass-fed, hormone-free, antibiotic-free food, so I'm sure we're getting some of that as well. Doesn't work the teeth and gums. That seems to be pretty consistent across the board. Less convenient, more labor intensive. Now, as far as less convenient and labor intensive, it can be more or less labor intensive. So if you want the easy way, you're going to go get some ground hamburger and a bag of frozen veggies and a cup of rice, throw it in your crock pot, add some water, turn it on, and walk away. That's pretty unintensive. That's pretty simple. Most people can do that. You can make it very labor intensive if you want to grind your own meats, chop your own fresh fruits and vegetables. You can make it as labor intensive as you want to. And I find that we kind of go back and forth, but somewhere in the middle of that. The other thing, if you're going to home cook, you have to balance the diet. I have a lot of clients who come in and say, "Oh, I home cook for my dog." Well, what do you feed them? Well, I use chicken breast and brown rice and green beans. Oh, do you ever vary that at all? Oh no, he's been on the same thing for months and months. Okay, well that's not a balanced diet. And so if you want to home cook, you really need to work with a nutritionist, work with your veterinarian, someone to get that diet balanced. You need to add vitamins and minerals. Dogs and cats have an extremely high calcium requirement compared to people. And you've got to have your calcium and phosphorus levels in balance. And that can be a little difficult to do. And if you're using some of the online websites, there's one balanceit.com. There's another one, I think it's called NAL, which is a nutrition analytics that tells you the number of milligrams of each vitamin and mineral in the diet that you prepare. It's wonderful, but then you have to remember that the percentages that they're giving you when they say how much, if it's giving you 78% of your daily requirement for calcium, they're using human measurements, not pet measurements. So it's very different. Now, with that said, working with a nutritionist, many, probably most veterinarians are going to tell you, I absolutely am against home-cooked feeding. I think you can't balance it. It's impossible. Don't do it. So I find that a lot of new clients in particular will come in and they don't know that I'm a fan of home cooked. And so they'll kind of sheepishly go, well, I cook for him sometimes. And I go, wow, that's great. Because you're also used to getting yelled at for home cooking for your pets. So, don't be afraid of getting yelled at. You're entitled to your opinion and how you want to do things. But you can also say to your veterinarian, I like to home cook for my food, and here's the reasons why. Because I can individualize the diet for my pet. I don't have to worry about preservatives. I don't have to worry about toxins in the food. And I feel very strongly that I want to home cook for my pet. I need you to work with me and tell me how to balance that. And next week, our webinar is all about how to make your own home-cooked diet. So we'll talk about it a little bit and some of the easy ways to get these diets balanced. One of the other cons is short shelf life. So if you home cook, you either need to refrigerate and only make enough to last maybe 4 to 5 days at a time and use it out of the refrigerator in that time period, or put it in small containers and put it in the freezer, which is really the easiest way to do it. Most of us who are really into home cooking, we tend to spend our Sundays making a crock pot full of food. I guess Sunday's the day of rest, but it's also the day of home cooking food. Particularly in the winter, Hugh and I will spend quite a bit of time in the kitchen chopping and grinding and making wonderful big pots of, we have a huge crock pot that makes a lot, and then Hugh is a chef and a cook, and he has one of those huge black, I call it the witch's pot, that he likes to make these wonderful stews in. So we'll make a couple of those at a time. And people come into our house and say, wow, does that smell really good? What are we having for dinner? And it's dog food. Okay. So raw food. Currently, my dogs are raw fed when they're not being fed home cooked. And I'm a big lover of raw feeding. And most veterinarians are very firmly against raw feeding. The American Veterinary Medical Association came out with a statement last year saying that raw feeding was detrimental to your pet's health and to your health and should absolutely not be condoned by anyone. The Delta Society, which is the pet therapy dog, and they regulate visitations to nursing homes and that sort of thing, they kind of passed this little statement also that said that no dog can be a Delta dog, therapy dog, if they are raw fed. So if you want your dog to be a therapy dog, you can either lie if you are feeding raw food, you can find a group that doesn't care, or you can switch off raw food. And personally, I also work with seeing eye dogs, and the seeing eye insists that all of the dogs that come through them are fed Purina products, so certainly not raw food, and they are absolutely against raw feeding as well. I personally, I believe that part of that is that who donates lots and lots of money to the AVMA and the Seeing Eye and the Delta Society? Well, it's certainly not the raw pet food companies. Those who have the biggest stake in the game are probably the ones who are sponsoring such things. So anyway, pros with raw food. It can be convenient if you're feeding a frozen raw, like any of the ones on the screen. Right now in my house, I have Stella and Chewy's. They're out of Wisconsin, and I have Darwin's, and they're out of Washington State. Frozen raw is very convenient. You store it in your freezer. It stores for a long time. The expiration dates on the bags are pretty long. And it's funny, I've had a lot of clients who buy a second freezer just for their pets so that they can buy the case and stuff it in there and not have to run out and buy it all the time. So it can be very convenient. You just pull that thing out of the freezer, stick it in your fridge, let it thaw out for a day or two, and feed as you go. The big thing, if you are feeding a frozen raw, do not feed it cold out of the refrigerator. You have to warm this up. So ways that you can warm it, you can put it in the microwave. I'm not a big fan of microwaving the food, one, because you tend to overcook it, and it does have ground bone in it, and we don't want that bone to get hard and brittle. And two, you do change the energetics and probably cause some toxic byproducts when you microwave food. Do I have a microwave in my house? Heck yeah. So the best way to warm this up that I have found is I run hot water through my Keurig coffee maker without a coffee pod in it. So I have a cup of hot water. I take the frozen raw, chop it up in the dog's bowl, add some hot water, swirl it around, stick my finger in it, and it's usually just about body temperature when I do that. So when I've added enough hot water to make it feel even temperature when I stick my finger in it, then it's ready to feed. If it's still cold, you're going to shut down the stomach's enzymes and digestive system when you feed it. So you really want to feed it at room temperature. It does have a long shelf life, particularly the frozen raw, so that's going to last in your freezer for quite a few months. It is a balanced diet if you're feeding the frozen raw. These companies balance the diets. They're about 80 to 85% meat, and the other 15 to 20% is fruits and vegetables, and they do add a vitamin mineral mix. Darwin's makes food that is specific for cats. So those who want to feed frozen raw to cats, they have really, really nice food. If your cat is older and has never been exposed to this, do not expect them to switch over instantly. Do not expect them to ever touch it if it is cold. They are going to want it mouse temperature, which is going to be body temperature. So you've got to get it up to that temperature for your cats. And cats don't necessarily like it with a whole lot of water added to it. Sometimes that's just a little too soupy for them, but sometimes they'll also lick the juice off and kind of like it. They do make a rabbit formulation, which is pretty close to something your cats might catch outside, so they might like that one. That might be worth trying. It is a natural diet. It's species appropriate. So I am a big fan of these frozen raw diets. Cons. definitely expensive. If you're feeding the frozen raw, the pre-formulated foods, you're going to spend $3 to $4 a pound, and a dog will eat 2 to 3% of their body weight a day. So if you have a 100-pound dog, you are going to feed 2 to 3 pounds a day, which means, if you're spending $4 a pound, that's $8 to $12 a day to feed your dog, which is why a lot of my clients with larger dogs or with large groups of dogs look at me like I have 6 heads and go, "You've got to be kidding. I don't spend that on my own food." So it can definitely be expensive. What a lot of people end up doing is they feed raw one meal and then feed canned or dry the second meal. And that's okay. If that's the something that you can afford to do, it's a compromise, no problem at all with that. Raw food may not work the teeth and gums. Certainly if you're feeding the frozen raw, those are patties, it's all ground. So, when you smash it up in the bowl, it's a soft product. Definitely not going to work the teeth and gums. How do we work the teeth and gums with raw food? Raw meaty bones. And I'm a big fan of raw meaty bones. So when you feed like that steak in the picture, if you were to feed that to your dog could eat that bone because that bone's not brittle. That bone hasn't been cooked. It's not going to splinter. I really like shank bones, like the femur bones or the thigh bones of cows. We have small dogs, so we feed the chicken flippers, which is the little end part of the wing. You can also feed chicken, turkey, or duck necks, which have really good crunchy vertebrae in there. And I have a lot of clients who feed those. Darwin's actually makes a really nice frozen duck neck, so you can order those if you don't have another source for those. The Amish markets definitely sell those kinds of things. You can feed chicken backs, duck backs, turkey backs, and wings, those sorts of things. A lot of clients feed the necks and the backs because they're kind of a waste product to the human industry, so they're less expensive, and they'll definitely work the teeth and gums. The marrow that's in the big marrow bones is very, very healthy for your pets. So some people worry about the bacteria on those bones, so here's what you can do. You can either put it in the freezer for a few days ahead of time and then thaw it out and let them chew on it. That'll kill the bacteria. Or you can make a pot of boiling water, throw the bone in there for 30 to 60 seconds, take it out, cool it off, and feed it. That'll kill the surface bacteria. Other cons can be less convenient and maybe labor intensive if you're grinding your own and sourcing your own. So if you're not feeding the frozen raw products and you're going to the butcher, or you're going to, around here we have Bringhurst Meats, and a lot of clients will go to Bringhurst. They actually make a raw dog food grind, which is much less expensive. It's going to be anywhere from 75 cents a pound to $2 a pound. So definitely less expensive. However, it is much more gross to handle and gross to look at because they don't make it all pretty in the package. So you're going to see tendons and ligaments and arteries and veins. And so particularly for vegetarian and vegan clients, that's over the top for them. And I have to say, even for me, I have gone and gotten some of those grinds. It's pretty over the top even for me. I like my things to be just a little more aesthetically pleasing, even though my dogs don't care. We do feed a lot of chicken hearts, chicken gizzards, chicken livers, and those don't bother me near so much. A lot of people can't even handle the chicken livers. They think they're gross. Another way to work teeth and gums for cats and for small dogs, gizzards. If they will actually chew the gizzards and not swallow them whole, gizzards are wonderful. They're lined with something called epichitin, which is the hard, it almost feels like bone. It's the hard lining of the gizzard, which is the crop of the bird. And that's the part of the bird's digestive system that breaks down the seeds, because birds don't have teeth. So the crop actually breaks down the seeds. So it grinds and grinds and grinds and grinds them down. So when a dog or a cat chews on those, it actually will break the tartar down off of their teeth and gums. So that's a really nutritious way, an easy way. You don't have to get in there and brush. So if you have a whole bunch of dogs, hey, gizzards. May have a short shelf life. You know, if you're not freezing the food and you're going and sourcing it fresh every week, you're going to have to do it every week. Or you can freeze it yourself. And you may have to balance the diet, because a raw food diet may not be completely balanced. And certainly if you're not feeding any bone with it, then you're not getting enough calcium. The phosphorus level in meat is high, the calcium level is not. So you definitely have to supplement your calcium if you're going to feed a ground raw diet, unless it is one of the ones packaged by a pet food company. Freeze-dried foods. Okay, pros. Can be very convenient. So for people who travel, this can be wonderful. If you're in the car for a few days and you normally feed home cooked or raw and you don't have access to a freezer, you can't get enough ice to keep something cool, you're out camping in the wilderness, this stuff is phenomenal. You don't have to carry a can opener with your cans. Definitely healthier and better than dry food. You don't have to add vitamins and minerals because these are a processed food that already has the vitamin and mineral mix added to it, has a good shelf life in it, and pretty well accepted by most animals. Now the Stella and Chewy's and the Primal and the Vital Essentials, those are complete meals. The Keen is made by Honest Kitchen. Honest Kitchen tends to make more of the dehydrated fruits and vegetables, and it's got the vitamin mineral mix in it, and what you're supposed to do to feed that is to add hot water and your own cooked meat. So that one is kind of a food base that you add your own meats to. They may have a couple of varieties that actually have the meat, but that one I think is more as a base that you add your meat to, whereas the Stella and Chewy's, the Primal, they're going to be just like their raw frozen product with the same vitamins, minerals. They basically took the frozen raw product and they freeze-dried it and sucked all the moisture out of it. So that brings up the cons. Lack of moisture. So this kind of puts us right back into the boat of the dry dog food. There's no moisture in this product. I have tried to rehydrate these products, and let me tell you, they're soft and they kind of feel like styrofoam. And you put them in a bowl of water and they float. And I have floated these in, I've floated different companies' freeze-dried patties in bowls of water for a half an hour. A half hour later, they're still floating in that bowl of water. Now, I will admit that when I floated them, I didn't float them in boiling water. So perhaps if I'd had boiling water, it might have worked a little bit better. But I haven't been able to rehydrate these. And so if you're on a camping trip and you don't have boiling water anyway, how are you going to rehydrate this product? It's fine if you're only feeding it for a couple of days. Okay, we'll let our dog drink extra water. These are not going to work the teeth and gums as well. They definitely can be expensive, and they are a heat-processed product. So am I a fan of these for long-term feeding? Nope, because we have the same problems with the dryness. What we lack in these and why these would be better than dry dog food is we don't have the carbohydrates in these. So overall, these are going to be better than dry food, but we've still got that dehydration issue. So unless you can get this thing to rehydrate, and again, remember the amount of water that you have to add to take something that is 5% moisture and get it up to 85% moisture is going to be a lot. So some of these smaller ones, the small niblets that are shown up in the corner there, great for training. Use them for treats. Those are great. You can carry those around in your pocket. Your pocket's not going to smell too horrible, and it's not going to be too greasy, and it's that's a great little product to carry around for something like that. But I don't like these as the only meal base for pets. Treats and snacks. So treats can be inexpensive. And they may work the teeth and gums if you're feeding raw meaty bones or chicken gizzards as treats. You can use real foods, and this is how it can be inexpensive. You can feed carrots, you can feed green beans. A lot of pets love raw green beans and raw carrots. Our Doberman used to steal the carrots from the horses in the barn. People would bring them out to feed their horses and they'd be gone because he would take them. Apples make a great treat. Dehydrated organs and meats and veggies, you can make your own. You don't have to pay a lot of money to go buy them. You can go buy some chicken livers. You can get a pound of them for $1. Throw them on a cookie sheet, put them in the oven, turn it to the lowest heat setting, and leave them in there overnight. You've got dehydrated liver treats. They're healthy. They're great. You can dehydrate veggies. You can slice up sweet potatoes. Same thing. Put them on that cookie sheet in the oven overnight. Makes a great treat. You can also use your treats to hide herbs and medications. So here's where we get into some interesting things that people use for treats to hide medications. So commonly I hear things like liverwurst and hot dogs. Has anybody ever looked at the ingredients of liverwurst and hot dogs? They're awful. I don't know why we eat them. And believe me, I love liverwurst and I love a good hot dog because they're full of sugars and nitrates and all kinds of things that are bad for us, but of course they always taste good. But they're awful. So if we're trying to treat something, why are we then throwing horrible food products at them? So what else could you hide medicine in? How about a slice of banana We've got one dog downstairs that if she sees us getting a banana out, there's no way we're getting away without giving her a piece of banana. It's easy to shove a pill into a piece of banana. You can use almond butter. Almond butter is phenomenal. A lot of people use peanut butter. My problem with peanut butter, if you're using a natural peanut butter with no sugar added, phenomenal. If you are using Skippy or Jif, flip it over and read the ingredients. It's loaded with sugar. That's why kids like it. So none of those, but you can use natural peanut butter. So anything soft that you think you can stick it in, that's phenomenal. Try putting pills in the middle of an apple. When I was growing up, my pony, the same pony that made me want to become a veterinarian, really had trouble walking, and he was lame most of the time. So in order to ride him and take him to horse shows, he had to be given bute, which is phenylbutazone, which is basically horse aspirin. So we didn't know much about horses at the time, and no one had ever told us that, hey, you can crush those pills up, add a little Caro syrup, put it in a syringe and squirt it in their mouth and they eat it fine. Nowadays, my horse has to take bute because he's old and arthritic, and it's made into a wonderful vanilla powder that smells like a cake mix, and I just mix it with his grain and he eats it. But we didn't have those things back in those days when I was a kid. So we got really creative, and we used to carve out the middle of an apple and put the pill in the middle of an apple and feed the pony the apple. And so that worked really well for quite a while. And then the pony really got smart. And I have to tell you, my mother, who is all of 4'10", got smarter than the pony. And she used to just take that pill and shove it down his throat just like she was pilling a dog. And it just used to crack me up. And I can still picture her doing that. So, if you can teach your dogs to take medicine the easy ways, you don't have to get so creative with hiding things. But our goal is to not have your animal be on a bunch of medications. So cons for treats and snacks, they can be expensive, may not work the teeth and gums depending on what you're feeding. If you're feeding bananas, they're soft. If you're feeding some hard biscuits, yeah, maybe they'll chew a little bit and work their teeth and gums. Toxic treats from China, chicken jerky. Boy, if there's anybody in this country that hasn't heard about the toxic chicken jerky treats from China, I don't know what rock you're hiding under. Please, please, please do not buy chicken jerky from China. The FDA and USDA, whoever governs that stuff coming into this country, they have been working really, really hard to get these things banned. The problem is they can't find what is toxic in them that is causing all these dogs to get sick. Now, personally, I still think it comes back to the melamine issue, but they cannot find the toxic principle. And so the bigwigs over in China are really mad that we're bad-mouthing them because they insist there's nothing toxic in there, yet there are many, many, many reports, just go online and look them up, of animals getting sick and dying after eating these chicken jerky treats. Make your own chicken jerky, or find something better to use as treats. Hidden calories. Treats definitely have calories in them, so think about that. If you've got an overweight or obese dog, you need to be really careful how many calories you're handing out as extra treats, and this is where things like a slice of apple or a string bean might come in handy. Next week, we're going to talk more about making your own treats and what treats and snacks can be good, can be bad. I have a few companies that I work with. One of them is Natural Bark. She makes wonderful treats that are made with molasses and applesauce apples and cinnamon and I think oats. Really, really good stuff and not stuff that dogs are going to be allergic to. I'm amazed when people come in with their big obese dogs and they say, oh, but doctor, he only eats a half a cup of dry dog food a day. Well, you and I both know a 100-pound dog does not exist on a half a cup of dry dog food a day. So there's something else that this dog is being fed. And I'll tell you what, people just absolutely insist, nope, he doesn't get anything else. He doesn't get anything else. And after about 10 minutes of questioning, I finally get them to admit, well, when he goes out to pee, he gets a bone. Oh, what size is that bone? Well, one of those 3-inch long ones. Oh, not even a little bone. Okay. How many times does he go out to pee during the day? Oh, 15 at least. Well, you know what? The dog doesn't have to pee 15 times. He's figured out he gets a treat every time. Where's all the calories coming from that this dog is getting? He's going out to pee a lot, except he's really going out to get a treat. So be really careful about the hidden calories in those treats because they can really sabotage your weight loss program. So what's next? Next week, we're going to talk about homemade and home-prepared raw diets, how to do it. We're going to talk just the basics, the simple next week. How to balance them, some of the easy ways to do that. We're not going to talk about specific diets for specific issues so much because that's a little further down the line. But for those of you who are thinking about, maybe I'd like to try that, maybe making a home-cooked stew for my dog might not be so bad, but I really don't have any idea where to start. We'll figure it out next week. So at least get you going in that direction. Okay, so if there's anyone with questions, we're going to open up to that at this point and see where we go from there.
All right. If I store my dry food in its own bag inside of a storage container, should I wash the storage container before adding new bags inside? Read storage mites.
Okay, so about storage mites, if I store the food in the bag it came in the storage container, should I wash the container in between? You betcha. So wash that container out really well, make sure you get it nice and dry, and then put your new bag in there. Some people put the whole bag in the storage container with the food in it, and some people dump the bag into the storage container. You're really better off to probably leave it in that bag because there's probably some preservatives in the lining. Oh, and that's one of the things we didn't talk about with the canned food as a con. There are some preservatives used in the lining of some of the pet food cans that some people feel are toxic. So feeding all canned food, you might need to be a little bit careful with that as well.
Miles is on Hills Wet and Dry. He had a very loose stool when I adopted him, and this food makes a big difference. What food would you recommend?
So I'm betting that's Corey. So Miles is on a prescription diet, wet and dry, because he had problems with diarrhea when she first adopted him. And, my biggest problem with prescription diets is that they are not made with good ingredients. And I think he's on WD, so flip it over and look at the ingredients. Basically, the reason WD works is because it has a lot of fiber in it. And so he has a fiber-responsive diarrhea. If I had to choose, I would at least take him off the dry and have him only on canned. So that would be step one. Let's do canned food only because then we're getting the moisture that we want in the diet and we don't end up with all those moisture deficiencies later in life. So that's step one. Then we could try starting to mix in some other foods as we go. But his bowel has gotten very used to a high fiber diet. So adding things like canned pumpkin would be a good way to start because that's going to add some natural fiber, or sweet potatoes. And, am I saying that we have to take them off WD in the long run? Not necessarily, but again, you're paying a lot of money for some really poor ingredients. It's probably got rice hulls or peanut hulls, or cellulose. It's got some sort of indigestible fiber in there, and you're paying a lot of money for that. So, if you want, we can just go get a good canned food, and then we can grind up some peanut hulls and throw it in there, and you've got the same thing. Oh, we have visitors coming to say hi. Come here, Dumpling. So let's see if I can get them one. Look, my eyes opened. This one is Snip, and Snip is now 2 weeks old. Say hi, Snip. That's little girl number one. Oh, come here. And this is Stripe. Say hi. Stripe is 2 weeks old. They're both little girls. These are our little Cabby puppies who were born 2 weeks ago. Oh, so tired. But our eyes open this week, so we're so cute and we like to lick. All right, Mommy's going nuts down here. Thank you.
Can I give fresh marrow bones from the butcher to my dogs?
Can you give fresh marrow bones from the butcher to your dogs? Absolutely. They will love them. If you have multiple dogs, please separate them. This is the one thing that I find almost all dogs will fight over. At our house, everybody goes in their own crate or their own room because they'll steal from each other and they're not nice about it. And I've got little Cavaliers who are not nasty dogs, but they love marrow bones. My big thing with the marrow bones is feed them fresh and only let your dog have them for a couple of hours and then throw them away. Because when they lay around the house, two things happen. One, they start to grow a lot of bacteria from the bacteria in the dog's mouth. And two, they will get dry and brittle and start to splinter. So Pick them up, throw them away, and get fresh ones every week or a couple times a week.
How long does a can of dog food last once opened and kept in the refrigerator?
How long does a can of dog food last once opened and kept in the refrigerator? Well, it's going to have a lot of preservatives in it, most likely. So you've probably got a good 3 to 4 days. I wouldn't push it past that. And again, I would warm it up each time you feed it.
Can you feed fresh turkey necks from the butcher or any raw bone from the butcher?
Can you feed fresh turkey necks or any raw bone from the butcher? You betcha. I buy them all the time. Turkey necks, chicken necks, duck necks. I have clients who buy whole rabbit carcasses, whole duck carcasses, whole chickens for the bigger dogs.
Okay, and Lakota is considered a hot dog. Would cooked chicken gizzards be an okay treat to give her if her sensitive stomach would agree?
Okay, so this is coming from Ita. Thank you. So Lakota's a hot dog, and so this is one of my clients, and she's a step or two ahead of us, and we're going to talk about whether your dog is hot or cold in a couple of weeks, but she already knows that her dog is hot. And so chicken tends to be a hot food, and we tend to avoid it a little bit in the hot dogs. However, the organ meat tends to be cooler, so chicken gizzards would absolutely be fine. What I'd recommend, if you can find turkey gizzards, turkey's much cooler than chicken. They're going to be larger because Lakota is a very large dog. So if you can find turkey gizzards, you're probably more likely that she'll actually chew them, whereas the chicken gizzards she may just swallow right down. So if you can go to the butcher or the Amish market and find the turkey gizzards, you're going to be better off.
Okay, we've got one more. Earlier you mentioned a specific diet to help manage yeasty ears, and we either grazed over the answer or this particular viewer missed it.
Okay, so earlier I mentioned problems with yeasty ears, and the viewer wants to know what's my solution to that and what diet is appropriate for yeasty ears. So I'm sorry to say there is no one size fits all for that. If you have a dog with yeasty chronic ears, they are allergic to something in their food. And most commonly, it's going to be the grains. So if you're feeding something that has wheat, corn, or soy, first of all, you've got to get rid of those because those are the most common allergens. And those glutens that are in the products also can be common allergens. But with that said, you may have a pet who is allergic to chicken or allergic to beef. Rarely will they be allergic to fish. So usually what I would do if I had a pet who had chronic yeasty ears, and let's say they're eating something like Purina dog chow. First of all, I'd get them off Purina because that's all corn and it's really hot. And I would probably avoid chicken-based foods. I would definitely avoid dry foods. Now, with that said, if you have a big dog and you can't afford to get away from feeding dry food, then I would look for a fish-based or a duck-based dry food. But I think the fish does the best. And again, we're going to get real expensive here, but the Origin 6 fish is one of my favorite for that. And if your dog doesn't have a beef allergy, you may be able to find a beef-based food. But you know, sometimes food trials can be really tricky, and to really do a good food trial, you want to find something that only has 1 or 2 ingredients in it and feed it. But if your dog is on a chicken-based food, I would switch to a fish-based food. With that said, make sure when you read the ingredients that chicken meal is not hidden somewhere down there in the ingredients. Remember, chicken is the cheapest meat to put into the bags of dog food, so commonly it is used as a filler. BG is a great grain-free dry food, but even their salmon and their bison have chicken meal in them. So I can't feed those to animals that have allergy problems because there's still chicken in there. So read the ingredients carefully. If you can afford the Origin 6 fish, I would try that.
That's all.
Okay, so that's all our questions for now. This webinar will be archived. You'll be able to access it later for friends who missed it. Check. Pretty immediately, and you can check through the website or go to the Justin TV.
YouTube. It'll be on YouTube.
Go to YouTube and look under Dr. Morgan webinars. I tried to search for them earlier this week, and I put in Clayton Vet, and I put in Judy Morgan, and I put in everything else, and then found out it's Dr. Morgan webinars, and it's very easy to find when you go that way. So if you look through YouTube, you'll find it easily. And I hope you'll join us next week, and thanks for stopping by today.
Thank you for joining us for our food webinar. Remember to follow us on all of our social media on Facebook and Twitter at ClaytonVetNJ. That's ClaytonVetNJ. Remember to visit our website as well for more information about how you can help your pet live a healthier lifestyle. Make sure you join us next week for the next installment of Dr. Morgan's Food Webinars.